Hello everyone, welcome back to Talinn Games. This video, I'm going to show you my latest kitbashing project. Now, one of my armies is Chaos Space Marines, specifically the Red Corsairs, and I find that Chaos has a lot of opportunities for kitbashing, and I like to make use of that. So, with this pile of parts that I got from a friend, I'm going to kitbash eventually a whole unit of Havoc Marines, but for this video, just one. Let's get started. I'm going to use these Heavy Intercessors that I have. I scrape off the Aquila on the front of his chest, and then I sand it flat. I also sand down the kind of hood section behind the Heavy Intercessor's head, because I want to be able to pose it, pose the head properly, make him look around quite easily. To kind of recall some of the Chaos elements, the kind of firstborn armour that they sometimes wear. I clip off the knee pad fin, the Primaris Marines, and sand it down so it kind of looks like that firstborn armour. Now that's the body built, time to add on the Chaos parts. I'm going to start by test fitting the backpack just to see if it'll sit flat, where will look good, and then I'm just going to clip off the pipes leading to the gun so that I don't have to worry about lining them up right. I'll return to this later with my own green stuff pipes, which will be easier to line up and will be able to fall quite naturally with the pose of the miniature. I do this both on the backpack and on the las cannon. Now for the arm, I'm going to use just a blob of green stuff to kind of fill out the shoulder joint. And also, while it's still soft, I can test out a couple different poses. Then I just use the back of my blade to kind of make a little bit of a ridge in that green stuff to make it look like the undersuit of the power armor. I do this pretty much the same thing with the backpack. And thankfully the las cannon green stuff is still not quite cured, so I can just adjust that, have it pointed down as I wanted to, and be quite happy with how everything's lining up. Now I grabbed a pointing hand from the Heavy Intercessor's kit to make the pose a bit more dynamic. The origin of this Red Corsair is that he was once an Imperial Fist, and thus he's still got that armour on. For my Red Corsairs, I like to have one armour panel at least to show kind of where they came from, as the ultimate disgrace to that old chapter. I grab a Berserker head that I have left over in my bits box, makes them look nice and angry, and then I grab, I think this is from the Chaos Terminator Lord kit, I can't remember exactly, but this will make the kind of traditional Heavy Intercessor form look a bit different. And then I move on to battle damage, because what's Chaos without a bit of battle damage? Using my hobby knife, I cut long kind of V shapes to look like scars and gouges out of the armour, and then use my pin vise to just drill quite shallow holes as bullet hole damage in various places that I like to imagine you would get hit while not actually dying. And then I use this triangular file to add kind of scuffs, or quite deep scuffs, in the outside edges of his armour and wherever he may have been hit by a bullet with a glancing shot. Now, reminiscent of the very battle damaged Huron Blackheart and very unhealthy, I thought I would add some tubes going straight into his chest to break up that silhouette that he has. So I start out with a small drill piece to drill a kind of pilot hole, and then grab the biggest drill bit that I have and drill right in all the way into his chest. So there you go, there's the nice big bullet hole. And then I'm just going to use my blade very carefully to cut into the chest with another one of those V-shaped gouges. And it'll look like a big tear in his armour. I did another one of those so that there's 2 tubes going in, and then I grabbed my roller maker from Green Stuff. Didn't get any footage of using it because it was my first time and I was kind of figuring things out, but once I've made those, I just put a dab of super glue on one end of the tube and place it into the hole that I had drilled. And then I'd put a dab of super glue on the other side and press it in to the backpack as if it's being supplied with power or fluids from the main armor generator. You may notice that I've drilled holes in the backpack and in the las cannon too, and do literally just the same thing. Bit of glue on either end. You can nip it off with the tweezers to shorten the length of the tube if you want to. And then what I do is I grab some super glue on the tip of a wooden toothpick, and that lets me place just a little bit of glue where I want it. Moving on to the base, I use super glue to attach a bit of cork, and this is a very cheap IKEA placemat that I've just ripped up. Off camera I have mixed up some milliput and just pressed it over the cork, smoothed it out with some water to make sure it doesn't really look like cork. Then I place some super glue and dip it into Geek Gaming basing material. And also put some kind of texture paste over the top. And that's him done, ready to get primed. So, here we go. There he is. Everything nicely brought together. Now let's do a kind of quick fire guide on my Red Corsairs. I use rattling grime to paint in any metallic sections, and then I use Barl Red contrast paint. Then I use Vallejo model colour black in 2 thin coats over any sections of the armour that I want black. Next up, I'm going to use some white to re-establish any overspilled sections, or any sections where I want the colour to be really bright. But while that white dries, because you need it to be completely dry before you paint over, I'm just going to use Guilliman Flesh Tone contrast for the head. Imperial Fist contrast paint for the yellows, Skeleton Horde for the bones, and then for my Imperial Fists that I paint, I use Mephiston Red mixed with black for any trim, so that's what I'm going to do here. It'll be a bit of a different tone to the other red, so it'll stand out nicely, and it covers generally in 1 coat. Right, once we are base coated then, this may seem sacrilegious to some, but I'm just going to do a coat of Null Nile over the whole model. And now I'm going to try out something new for my Red Corsairs. Using the traditional paints that I use, which is Mechanica Standard Grey and then Fenrisian Grey, I'm going to sponge up in ever-increasing layers on the black sections of the model. Then I'm going to use Evil Sun Scarlet. I tried sponging it again and it did give a nice pop, but truthfully I decided that probably in the future I'm not going to use sponging on my Red Corsairs again, and just came in with some traditional highlights, fairly thick because I want to get this done fast. Then I just use plain old Mephiston Red to highlight the Imperial Fist shoulder pad, again giving it a different tone. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and salvage my grey highlight. So I grab some of that Fenrisian Grey and just do some fairly basic, quick highlights. A nice and thin paint that I find that covers well, so that lends itself well to edge highlighting. Next up, I'm going to move on to the yellow sections and use Flash Gits Yellow. This is just basically going to go everywhere except the recesses. Then I use some Dawn Yellow to give it an even further pop, but not everywhere, just on kind of the main bits that I want to really stand out. Moving on to the skin, I'm just going to use Kislev Flesh Now to finish off, firstly I sponged over everywhere that there was rattling grime, and it made it look like a decently shaded and painted metallic. Then I'm just going to do a couple chips on the legs and paint some in these bullet holes. Now then I used Agrax Earthshade to wash that battle damage, make it look a bit rusted and dirty, as is the way with Chaos. And finally we're onto our base, so I use Garagax Sewer and do a nice coat over the whole model, and then grab some of that Administratum Grey and just paint it over the wet paint, like so. And it kind of just blends itself. It's fairly easy, you just paint as you normally would, and it gives a nice dirty rock look that I think looks pretty realistic, to be honest. Like so, you can see it here in this picture. Not a great picture, but that looks fairly realistic. And I'm just going to finish it off by one of my favourite dry brushing techniques when it comes to contrast, which is, yes, Screaming Skull. You can dry brush it over most contrast paints and it highlights it fairly well. It's just a light neutral colour, ever so slightly warm, that is fairly thin as well, so most of that underlying colour shines through. And there we have it, a finished Havoc Marine. I'm going to paint the rim in black. And there it is, my finished Havoc Marine. Hope you've enjoyed me going through my process for both kitbashing and painting. This was a bit of a tricky one to film, and hopefully if I do kitbashing again in the future, I've learnt from my mistakes and can get a better flow going. So hopefully you'll join me again sometime back here at Talinn Games. But in the meantime, keep on painting.